Hey there, Jim here. Today we're going to have a look at this multimeter. So this is a NJTY T58C in the box. Should be a T58C in the box. I ordered this multimeter at the request of one of the viewers who provided some feedback after I reviewed a different model, T58A or T58B. I don't remember exactly anymore. The T58C, its claim to fame, or at least one of its claims to fame, is that it measures inductance, which not a lot of multimeters do. So I ordered the 58C from AliExpress. After a variety of twists and turns, it's finally arrived here, and so we're going to put it through its paces today. Now, before I get started, I just want to mention I did order this with my own funds. If you found this video to be helpful, please give it a thumbs up, or better yet, subscribe to my channel. Questions and comments are always welcome. I appreciate the feedback. It helps me know where I can focus my efforts. And this video is a perfect example of that because I purchased this meter because of a request that appeared from a viewer on one of the videos. So without further delay, let's get into the box. Now we're going to slice this open. It's like most of the things that come from China through AliExpress. It's got a layer of bubble wrap, although in this case only one layer of bubble wrap on the outside. And then the box is on the inside. So this is listed as a 1000 volt true RMS digital multimeter. It's a pretty nondescript box. It really doesn't tell you what's inside. Now, we open this up, and there's a nice pouch and an instruction booklet. The instruction booklet is in many languages. The English language section runs for 16 pages. Okay. All right. We'll just put the box aside. We'll open this up, and there it is, a very good-looking NJTY T58C. And the main feature, the L for inductance. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is we'll be checking to see how well that works. We'll have to find some inductors somewhere to test. And it's got a nice, I think this is I don't think it's a silicone case. It's probably a PVC case, rubber case. But it's a nice case. And as is pretty typical for a lot of these units these days, there's a thermocouple for doing temperature readings. And a pair of probes. And the probes feel pretty good. I don't think it's silicone. I think it's PVC. It doesn't have the kind of drape that silicone usually does. Silicone would, yeah. And they're not branded, but of course they do have the shrouds here that are intended to raise their safety rating. And the probes are rated for 10 amps, Cat 3, Cat 4 probes. And so the only thing that doesn't come in the package is the battery, although, and I doubt there's no battery pre-installed. One of the things that's nice is this is 9,999 counts. That's kind of nice. That means that the ranges will work very nicely. So we got to get some batteries in here, and then start trying things out. It's really got a lot of functionality here. Let's open up the battery compartment. Oh, and that's nice. We've got the in-use fuses that are down here at the bottom. They're attached You can see they're attached to the internal circuit board, and then a couple of spare fuses up there. So it's nice that they're visible there and we don't have to take it all to pieces in order to get the fuses replaced. The other thing that you know I'm a bit of a stickler for is the brass insert threaded ring there to ensure that the screw that holds the back compartment on doesn't chew up the plastic. And if you followed some of my videos, you know that there are actually some people making meters that still don't put those brass rings in there. And, well, I don't think very much of them. So let's get a couple of batteries in there. Actually, 3 batteries, AAAs. And then we'll do the first power up. Batteries are in. Let's close up the cover. Okay. Now this meter uses a dial, so let's just give it its first power on. We'll turn it to volts, and there we go. So this is meter. A couple of things to notice just right off the bat. You're probably seeing that the sockets light up to tell you where to put the probes. That's a really neat feature. I have to tell you that I've made the mistake a few times of putting the probes into the wrong sockets, especially when switching between modes, and it's caused a blown fuse or two on occasion. And it's just nice, and especially if you're not, you know, with this one, which has 4 sockets, you know, there's the typical kind of like, you know, voltage and ohms, hertz, capacitance, you know, the multi-use, what I'll call it, positive socket over here. There's a common socket, and so the black probe will go here. But then there's another socket here. This one is for the amp range, and then there's another socket here for microamps, milliamps, and it looks like the inductance is also measured off of this socket. And so with all of these things going on, it can be a little challenging sometimes to always make sure that you've got the probes in the right place. Let's for a second turn this on to inductance and see what happens. Yeah, so look at that, inductance. It tells us that we should be there. You know, microamps and milliamps. It tells us that we should be over there. Whoops. Amps tells us we should be down there. So it's really, really handy. And I know, you know, you might think that it's a bit of a gimmick for people who are maybe not so experienced, but even us experienced folks, once in a while, it really does help to have that reminder. And I just, honestly, I think it's a really cool thing to have the sockets light up. I mean, what's the harm of having that little bit of extra help when to avoid making a mistake that could be a costly one. The next thing what we're going to want to do is I'm going to put this through my fairly standardized set of multimeter tests. Of course, there's some functionality here that is not standard, like the inductance, and so there's a little extra we'll have to do, but we'll put this unit through its paces. Now, I wonder, oh yeah, so like the other, so this NJTY is very similar to the Proster. I think one is a rebranding of the other. But one of the things that's very cool, and it's got a backlight, but the backlight, it senses when it gets dark and it turns the backlight on automatically. So watch this as I bring this piece of paper over the sensor. Look at that. The backlight just turns on its own. Isn't that a clever feature? It's amazing how many multimeters don't do that. There's an ability to turn off the auto backlight. So here I can have it so that the backlight, you can see now that I've covered the sensor, it's not turning on. Why you'd want to do that is a bit of a question, but maybe you do. Maybe you don't want any stray light. But if you press that button, the backlight comes on. But as soon as the sensor sees that it's bright enough, it turns off. And I think I've got to say, it's such a simple feature, but it's amazing that so few multimeters actually do that. DC voltage, they match pretty well. AC voltage, and you can see that the readings match pretty well. And the NJTY, it also has because it's got a multi-line display of sorts, it shows the frequency of the input voltage as well. So it's showing us the 60 hertz that the mains electricity is at. I have a black, green, brown resistor here, and so that should measure out to 150 ohms. So that's resistance, pretty close to 150 ohms. Continuity test. Pretty good. Diode check. 216 millivolts, which is about what we would expect. However, there's no beep to tell us that it's properly forward biased. Capacitance. This is a 1000 microfarad capacitor. 977, 65, so that's pretty good. This capacitor is measured out in this location most of the time, around 970. And that was a pretty quick measurement. Capacitance one more time so that you can see the performance. That's pretty quick. I like the performance on the capacitance test here. Non-contact voltage. The sensor is here on this side of the unit. And of course, if we bring this plug close by, it starts to react. Not very strong reaction, but it is reacting. So, fairly dependent upon the position of the hot wire to the non-contact sensor. Now we're going to measure DC milliamps using a little test circuit here. And so the test circuit is going to put 5 volts through this 150 ohm resistor. If we do our math through Ohm's law, that should come out, as long as there are no extra resistances here, that should come out to about 33 milliamps. And so now we're going to hook it all up and see if we do get anything close to 33 milliamps. Now I'm going to switch this to the milliamp scale here. So that's DC milliamps, and we can see that that socket is flashing, so we'll move the probe over. It's a good reminder to us because I've made the mistake of not switching that over. Everything's now hooked up when the circuit's powered, and so this is now DC milliamps. You can see I've got a lot of precision here, so this is showing 31.82 milliamps. On many other meters that only have an amp range, that would be showing as 0.032 amps. And so that's pretty good. That's pretty consistent with other measurements I've gotten out of the same circuit. We're going to now look at inductance. I've got this SMD inductor that I've pulled off of a board. And if you can read that, that says 472. And so that should be 4.7 millihenries. So we'll just see what we get. This is now set to inductance. .9. So that's pretty good given that inductors tend to have a very wide error bound. This inductor says that it's 222. So that would be 2.2 millihenries. So 2.3. Once again, that's pretty good. So very nice inductance reading on this meter. I'm really happy to see that. Temperature, let's turn here. And so now that's where we plug in our thermocouple. So the black will go there, the red will go there. And so we have one sensor, or one part of the display is showing the internal thermocouple sensor. This other one, the large digits, I'm now warming that up with my fingers. That's showing this thermocouple sensor. And 32 Celsius is typically what I get when I do that with my fingers. 33. If I try really hard, I might be able to get it to 34. But that's a pretty good reading for the temperature sensor. And most of the time we're looking for large swings in temperature, not worried about any kind of 1 or 2 degree inaccuracy with temperature readings. But that temperature sensor works nicely. And it's nice to be able to get the comparable reading between the sensor, the probe sensor, if you will, and the internal sensor, because quite often we're looking for temperature gradients between some process and the ambient environment. Oh, look at that. I've managed to get it to 34. I generally don't do current readings, AC current readings, that is, with these meters, because I would generally recommend using a clamp meter for doing AC current measurements. Any clamp meter for $20, $50, $70 will do a very good job of measuring AC current. Maybe not DC current, that price range, but certainly AC current, and much safer to measure AC current where you have to otherwise get hooked into a circuit using a clamp meter, which does it in a totally non-contact fashion. A few other items to mention here, just for completeness. There's a data hold button here that holds a reading. So at the point where you press it, it'll lock in the reading. There's a relative reading, which is used to allow us to take a reading, a base reading, and then figure out what the delta value is. There's a max and a min, determining when we have a varying signal, like maybe a varying voltage, we can use that to determine what the maximum voltage and what the minimum voltage was over the reading period. Similarly, the peak voltage, this will lock in a peak, well, peak of any value. So this will not just voltage, but peak will lock in a peak value. Range is used if we want to do manual ranging. And then this func button is used if we want to change a function. So for example, recall here, this option changes between diode check, ohms, resistance, and continuity. And we use this func button to cycle between those different operations. And then last but not least here, the backlight, which I showed at the beginning, and the flashlight as well. So that's nice. In summary, this is a really nice multimeter. It has all of the features that you really could want in a multimeter. Measurements are fairly quick, they're fairly responsive, it operates fairly well. I didn't do everything side by side with the Fluke like I do in some of the videos, but the one area where the Fluke tends to be really super fast is the continuity test, and we saw the NJTY. It was pretty fast on the continuity, so very impressive. And then this multimeter has that inductance measurement function. And I mean, that's just not something you see on a lot of multimeters. So that's a really great feature to have on a multimeter. The only thing on this multimeter that might be a little bit sketchy, and of course, your opinion may vary, the non-contact voltage detection up here. The non-contact voltage detection could be a little better. However, if you're doing a lot of work with AC wiring, you probably have a handheld or a pen type kind of tester, and so you have other ways of checking for voltage in a non-contact fashion. You're probably not going to rely on something that's big and bulky like a big handheld multimeter in order to do your non-contact voltage detection. So a nice feature to have and certainly functional, but the performance on non-contact voltage is not really the thing that I'm looking for in most of these multimeters. It would be nice if the diode check feature in this unit actually produced an audible beep when it finds the measurement, when it finds that the diode is forward biased. That's an unfortunate lack of something that I would like to see in a meter of this type. So all in all, a really, really nice unit. Really, really nice unit. If you found this video to be useful, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time.